7:30, we'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, including Jamie Amlung on the phone. On the agenda, the budget discussion and approval of the budget to be published. Mr. Wilson?
Okay, I'm going to give you kind of a quick overview of the budget and some of the things for the new board members. That's a little different about school budgets probably than other budgets, and they're kind of complicated. They're very complicated in some ways. And of course, we're based on a fiscal year, not the annual January to December, which can get complicated as well. Sometimes we have a year and a half of funding. So a lot of times we really depend on the people up the state saying that's right, and we go, okay, because we can't figure out how they got that number, so we got to trust them. But go over a few things with this and talk about some concerns, I should say, towards the end, and as I'll point some out as we go along, and just show you where we're at. This afternoon, we reviewed it with the KSDE accountants up there, and Burl, who's worked with us many times, went through with us, saw the same things we saw. We talked about potential solutions to some of the possible future issues if we don't make some changes. We were in agreement on that, so we had a good discussion with him. Cynthia and I did. Now, first thing on here at the top, this is what they call an open page, and on this page, of course, it's all a big, huge Excel sheet, basically spreadsheet. But this is where we enter all of our information. They have some of it's already pre-entered by the state. We enter some of the other things, and then when you hit that button, it scatters it to all the other spreadsheets through the system. And so you want this to be right because it figures how accurate or inaccurate you are the rest of the way in your budget. These up here are assessed valuations, and from 18 and 19, and then the assessed valuations for this year. And I have to say, this is probably some of the lowest that they have gone up since I've been here. We've always been fortunate, our assessed valuation's gone up quite a bit each year, which helps us a lot of times when we do LOB, things like that, as far as our taxes and such. But they didn't go up very much this year. So, like general fund assessed valuation to this year, 30,000. We've gone up quite a lot more than that in the past many times. So, that's not a surprise. It's been a long time. They've gone up every year. There's going to be some time it's going to flatten out a little bit, and that's what's happened here. Now, some other things. Those they go off last year's, actually back to 2018. I'm not going to worry about that too much because we'll talk about that on the last page. This next line right here is very important and something that we have to worry about. This was the number we used last year when we did our budget, 675.1 students. That's from clear back in September of 17. You get to go with last year's number or the year before's number, whichever's higher. Okay? Now, this year we'll use 18's number, which is 672 FTE, full-time students, 672, down a little bit from 675. Now, if this year's number, and on September 20th, we really need it to go up as many as possible, because we don't want to have to use this number, 653.7. That's a 20 student drop, 19 student drop. Now, this happened, no less, last year when we thought we were actually going to go up in student numbers. If you'll remember, members that were on last year, we were saying, yeah, we got this big kindergarten class, and if we keep all our other kids we might be at 690 or something, you know, because we were 673. I mean, we were figure 680 at least. It dropped. We dropped almost 20 kids, even with that class still being a good-sized class. We lost a bunch of kids. Now, the last time we went through that, since I've been here, we went down a year, and then we went back up. Maybe not all the way back up, but we went up quite a bit. And we got to skip. We had a year like this, and we got to skip that year, and we didn't have to use that number. We got to go around it. So, but we only used 672 once because we used 675 2 years in a row. We used 672 this year, but next year we pretty much have to use that number or whatever number we get this year. It goes to the next year's budget. So you can plan. So right now we know this is the number we use to do all our planning on budget for student numbers. So we don't want to have to use that one. That is like a loss of between $90,000 and $100,000 of funding. Right there. Now every kid we get above that, 5 kids, 10 kids, all better than that number. It's about $90,000 to $100,000. Okay? Now, the rest of this is pretty much the same. Transportation, we figure we transport about the same number of kids each year. Our clock hours we adjust a little bit. Each year we've offered more tech ed classes this year, so those are up. But we enter all that stuff, Cynthia enters that stuff on the front page. The second page, there's not a lot on there. They enter this, the size of our district. They tell us how big our district is. Our capital outlay now is authorized permanently. Used to we were on the 5-year. The board voted to make that permanent, and it's up to 8. We do 5.5 mils, and we still have it at that. Even with the taking the money out for the track, we're still in good shape, and we'll be able to build that back up. I wish we could build our other accounts up like we could in capital outlay, but it's a different thing. So here was last year's final audited amount for our general fund, $5.5 million. Okay, so that's called the open page, and that's where you start. Now this page is, oh, I don't want to use that one. I handed you out one, because that one turned sideways, so I just made one for you. That shows Form 110. It's called Form 110. And it's sideways, except when I put it on the screen. So it looks like this. Should be one in front of you. Okay, I gave you the combined one. We have one from each county. So every county sends this in, and Robert sends ours from Norton County. Each county sends it in. Sometimes we have to call and make sure they get it in, but we finally do. Now, so what this form does is just list the taxes they expect us to collect for this year. Tax rate for delinquent taxes is set at 5%. You see that we do pretty good. We collect down there on tax collection ratio. We collect at 94%. That's not bad. So we leave that there. The other thing in table 1, we have to say how we figure we're going to collect. Your big months always are January, obviously, and June are 2 of your big months that you're going to collect most of your money to the district from the counties. But it's got to, you got to make sure it equals 100%. So we have several pages of this. We have the combined. It has several pages on it, but this is the main front page. And sometimes some of these taxes will go up and down a little bit. Motor vehicle and various things, it changes. One year we had recreation jumped real high, and we thought, oh, maybe that's wrong. I guess it was right. It stayed that way 1 year or 2, and then it went back down. So they can change, but that's for our local, part of our local taxes. All right, 148 is another form we use, and this is, I'm going to skip by it and go to 150 and come back to it actually. kind of work out of order. Okay, this is one of the key pages you fill out each year. So this is Form 150 for claiming our money. There's our 672 students. We talked about we get to use that number. The next line, we get weighting. Every school in the state gets weighting, either high enrollment or low enrollment. They don't leave anyone out. But you never know, I don't know what the magic is, but you never know what the magic is on this little factoring number here. I have no idea where they dream it up, but they do. So we get to count 240 because we're low enrollment. Then we go down. Bilingual, we don't have really a bilingual program at the moment. We counted 0.9 because we do testing and provide a little bit of help for students there. Career and tech ed, like I said, we increased that. Last year I think it was about 7, wasn't more than 9. We moved it up to 11 because they added classes at the high school. So we're going to have higher numbers in tech ed. So that's 3 or 4 kids more than we had when we audited last year. Free lunch, we kind of have to guess on that, get an estimate. So they do that formula. Again, I have no idea where it comes from. Get 99.2. On down there is transportation weighting. Basically the miles you drive on routes, and they will go on, not Google Maps, but it's something that they bought. They'll track your routes and they'll say how many miles. Sometimes you get a fight like, we don't go that way because it's either an unsafe road or it's a terrible road. We're not going to put our buses on that road. We go around, that's why, and they don't usually listen to you. They say, well, that's the closest route. So it doesn't make that much difference for us, but it's kind of annoying. Special education weighting. Now, there's a special education amount. This is the amount budgeted from the state to go to special ed. It's a flow through. So it comes to us to make our general fund look big, then it goes right back out and goes to special ed. So it makes it look like we have, $7 million budget and it's 6. I mean, it's almost that much now. So, but we do get to use a little bit of it to count towards our general fund. They do another formula on it. So, you get down here. This is why it can cost you $100,000 when you lose 20 kids. So instead of 1, by the time you factor all these things in here, now you've got 1,267.6 times per student state aid of $4,569, which has gone up every year for the last 3 years from the court agreement. And this year was the last year on the main money on that. Now it'll be a much lower amount, depends on consumer index of cost of living or something like that. So that gives you $5,791,000. Okay?
So in actuality, even if the enrollment, concerning next year, if you got to that point, because you're multiplying by a factor of 35.8%, you're actually only losing $30,000 on the end with that drop. Because you're not getting the full credit of the 672. Well, if you go from 672 to 653 times that factor, you're only dropping from a 240 to a 233.6, which is a 6.5 times less, which is only $30,000.
Well, I don't. Because he told me he figured it today, and told me it's about 90.
It's just from that formula, it just doesn't look like it plugs in anywhere else after you multiply by that lower percentage.
Yeah. Because, each kid will be that much. I think it doesn't matter. Okay, so we get that. So this is general state aid to figure out how we get state aid. There's the special ed money. Then that's when you end up. So you take your $881,000 out of there, and now you got $4,910,560. Okay. So that's what we get from the state, which is up from last year. Now, Form 155 is LOB supplemental general fund money. It's a percentage. So we're at 30% on our LOB. Now they help you out a little bit because you can go back and down here at the bottom, they'll throw the special ed money back in and give you even a higher number here to figure your LOB general fund budget number, which the only time you use it is to figure your 30% of that number. So that's how you get your LOB percentage. Now, so I guess that's one good reason to run it. They gave you a good reason to run it through the system, is to do that. Now, so 1,750,135. Now, when we talk later, we'll talk about a need for potential and need for more funding, and how we find some more funding later on. Not for this year, but you can increase your LOB to 33%. Now you have to vote on that, and it's open for protest, and that would raise us about 100, could raise us, depending on the number of students at the time, up to $175,000 more dollars. We've never done that because we've never needed to, but we might get in a situation in the next year or so that we want to talk about that. As in this spring, we might want to talk about that. You have to do it, you have to let them know in the spring if you pass that, so that they're prepared to give you that money in the fall. That you can't spring that on them on September 20th. Okay? Now we'll pop back out of here real quick. Those are just a few. Those are the main funding. There's a little bit of federal funding, but we don't hardly get anything. Impact aid, we usually take it direct. We don't run it through, and then they count it against us when they do the audit. They go, oh, you got this much impact aid from the lake, and they just pull that back out of state aid, so there's no use in putting it in the budget. It's just a direct. Now, we have, on the other side, once you get to how you're going to spend the money, you have codes. So forms on one side on gathering the money, codes on the other side on budgeting the money out. So, general fund. You got your resources, where it comes from, state aid. There's $4,910,560. There's that special ed money that really goes straight to the co-op. Now you'll notice here was the last couple of years, those I don't know what sets that formula for the co-op, but it was 815, dropped to 809. So this is a budgeted number. It's not, they're not going to end up with 881,000 in the end, but it'll be in the ballpark. Thing is, we don't find that out until June. It's like too late to do anything about it for us. They're like, okay, whatever you say, because it's like in 2 weeks you're going to be at the end of the year. So you don't want to under do that. You want to make sure you have plenty there, that it's plenty high, because it's kind of otherwise you're running around trying to republish a budget with 2 weeks to go in school of the fiscal year. Okay, so when you add it all in, you get $5,791,000 with your $881,000 added in. Now, I gave you a sheet also. I handed out because I forgot to put it on the deals. It did 2 copy, only did 1 of general fund, like I have up there, and then on the back side it has expenditures. Now there's several pages of general fund expenditures actually in the budget, but I just wanted to show you the first page because it tells you a lot. So if you look on expenditures and you look at line 210, code line 210 in the middle there, salary certified. And you see the previous 2 years of actual and this year's of budget. So budgeted for $2,258,820. Now, that's not all of our certified money, but that's a big chunk. That's a good chunk right there. Okay? And you can see where it's gone up, and we kind of budget our salaries, certified specialists, stuff fairly close to what we know, when we know what they're going to get. Now, you remember last year negotiations went, we already published the budget before negotiations finished, so we kind of had to stab at it a little bit. This year, we know where we're at. Then it's got non-certified, our benefits like insurance. You can see how those have gone. Of course, it's got social security. Then down further, it's got support staff certified, 126,000 more. Instructional support staff, some more, 204,000. Okay, so you get the drift. Most all of general fund now is salaries and insurance. Wouldn't that be right, Gina? Pretty much, general fund is just about all that now, except for some transfers and stuff. And now we're getting more, creeping more and more over into supplemental for salaries. Okay, I'll go to the next one. Now, I do want to show you the supplemental first. Now, supplemental is one fund of the general fund. You cannot carry anything over, so you got to spend it all or transfer it out. You don't want any left. You don't want to send it back. So you want it at the end of the year. You want it all spent or carry over somewhere else. Now, supplemental, you can carry a little over, and that's where what this is where we allow, like we said, 89%. We're going to collect 89%. Then when we get the rest of that, like 5% more, to get to that 94 on that first 110 page, that's that money. That's what we start the year with, because we don't get our first money from the state for a while after July 1. It takes a while to get it, and this year even, some of it was a little later even, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the 10th.
Yeah, like the 10th, so it's almost getting close to payday, and some things we got to pay some bills. So we need that money to start the year off with. All right? Then here's our taxes that were on that 110 Form 2. Delinquent taxes collected, motor vehicle, recreational. You can see, oh, it was commercial vehicle. See, went to 10,000 all of a sudden. So obviously they didn't estimate that for this year. Okay, supplemental state aid has been pretty steady. It's gone down the last couple of years, but pretty good. Now, so add those all together and you get your 1750, 135 again of our money. 89%, which means we'll have some left over, approximately somewhere close to that. We'll have to watch, but it should be pretty good to start the next year with. Okay? Now, I want to show you this one, special education, because this is an area that has got us a little bit in a bind, to be quite honest with you. Okay, now, I'll fully admit I kind of missed the boat on this, but after talking to Verl today, I don't feel quite so bad. But here's what we were carrying over in special ed fund. You're allowed to carry over in special ed fund. A couple of years ago, we had $794,846. That's too much. Especially at that time, that was too much. We shouldn't be carrying over that much money in there. But look how much it dropped in 1 year. Well, I didn't think that much about it when we dropped that much that year, because we'd always been able to replace it with carryover money at the end of the year from all of our funds. But then when we went from there to there, which really wasn't even that, we added some at the end. We had about 300. It was down to 200 and some thousand. Not quite 300,000. We bumped it up to 515,000 at the end of this year. Well, we owe the co-op $497,000. So look, we're running it out. We're burning it up. That's our problem. That's one of our problems. Okay? Now we've budgeted, we scraped and budgeted some this year right in, because some of these we added during the year last year, but we got that to start with. We'll be able to add to that, and we'll be fine this year. You could do that and make it. But what about the next year? That's gone, and you're talking about, you don't want 200,000 and try to figure out how you're going to find $300,000 out of your budget when we've got it pretty much already placed. So this is the This is one of the problems. Is the increase in special ed over the last 3 or 4 years cost. So here's what they are getting from the federal government, and that's estimated. Here's what they're getting from us. So it went from 442 to 479 to 498 in 3 years. And that's where we were having trouble keeping up. Questions on that? So this year, these were like 7.5% 2 years in a row, and then we held them to 5 this year. But they're going to have to wall up more than that this next year, because we're going to have to. We can't keep doing that. And we're the biggest district, so we pay the highest amount. They go off your FTE. Since we're the biggest district in the co-op, we pay the most in. It's not your number of special education kids, it's just your number of students. So that's how that works. Phillipsburg and Norton going to pay about 40% of the whole co-op budget, beside the Fed money, but I mean of local money going in. About 40% between the two of us. Everyone else makes up the rest. And they're all quite a bit smaller districts now. Okay? That's one of the areas of concern. Okay, the one that usually boards are most worried about are the last page. Before I talk about this last page, the other area that was pointed out, and we were aware of this and we talked about earlier this spring, is food service. We're having to put a lot of money into food service. Now it shouldn't be totally self-supporting, but we shouldn't be having to put $50,000 or so in there to help to keep it afloat. So we raised prices, you know, this year on meals, and we went the limit, and we will have to go the limit next year to try to kind of catch up a little bit on costs, because it's been kind of expensive. So food service is an area that we had built up, and it's dropping, and of the amount we have saved. And the other one that worries me the most, because it's way more money, is special education. And I'll talk about some of those things here as soon as we go through this part. Okay, here's what goes in the paper, except they turn it sideways. They put it like that, out flat. So our mill levy, everything looks great. We're in good shape. 20 mills, you're required. Everyone has to collect 20 mills for the state. There's our LOB. It's 16.693 for this year. You can see it was 17.5. So it's actually down. It always stays kind of in that area, just in that area. Our capital outlay is 5.5. Okay, so raise about, end up with, raise about 314,000, 315,000. Other important ones, there's the special ed. These others, we don't really collect any tax on, except the capital outlay. These three are our three main ones. Then down here is bond and interest. We try real hard to keep those as close as we can, balanced 8.7, 8.7, 9.1, just up a fraction. it varies because we want to make sure we make all our payments for the year to our bond. So we always call, that's one of the main reasons we call in and ask them to do the math on that, to make sure we put aside enough money and collect enough tax to pay through the next year's payments. Okay? Then of course on down here we collect for the 5 mills. So it ends up 51.296, 51.3. So you can see we're right, 51.7. So the same. Then somewhere is the rec commission. 3 mills for the rec commission. We collect their money for them. Okay, that's the outside agency we collect from. Okay, any questions on that? This is what will be approved and go to be in the paper. Then it'll be like at 7:20 on our August board meeting. What is that, 10th? August 10th. And we'll have a hearing at that time. I don't think that's going to be anything that's going to cause anyone to come to the hearing because usually it's when their taxes go up. So then that'll take about that long to approve it. And then we'll be off on another year. Now, a couple things I want to share with you in concerns, and I mentioned some of them as we went through this a little bit. First of all, is our student numbers dropping? If we really drop that far, it's going to cost us a lot of money.
What's one student worth then? Dollar value?
$4,569.
For just a student that with nothing else, but we get add on all the wages, so that we're almost 2 students instead of 1, basically. It's almost 2 per. It's like 1.9 something or something. Okay, so he said like about $90,000. What he told me earlier today, for if we would lose all 19 of those kids. Now, salaries. We've gone up salaries. Our salaries are taking up a big chunk of our budget. It's like about 66-67% is on salaries and insurance. We know insurance went up this year. So salaries and insurance are a big chunk. That only leaves X amount left to pay our special ed and all the other things we do. Repairs, our bills, our fuel, all those things. So when it's your biggest chunk, that's the area, if you gotta save money, you're going like, well, how do we save money in salaries? So that's kind of different. Health insurance is another thing, and our property insurance went up a little bit. Our health insurance went up quite a bit, and the special education increases $90,000 in just 2 or 3 years going up. So first of all, we're going to try to save all we can through the year this year, which is a crazy year to try to do that. We have some help with money from the federal government for COVID, so some of those expenses will come out of that. There'll be some county money, same thing. We can itemize and expense, so when we're buying that, but it can't be something we already buy. So I can't put like teacher salaries on COVID money. Now, if I have a janitor who has to do extra cleaning and it's overtime, I might be able to do something like that because it's cleaning. Or food service has to do something beyond what they would normally do, maybe. But I can't just use COVID money to pay regular salaries. Okay? Or buy regular stuff that's not part of the issue. Like I said, we're okay this year, but we got to look ahead to next year and what we're going to do. So through the fall, I'll be coming to you, talking about some things and some ideas of how we can build this back up a little bit, get our special ed carryover and extra build up a little bit so that we don't have to raise $500,000 every year to pay that year's bill and then start over again the next year. We need to have a little extra enough that we can just raise a small amount and do it. And I don't mean by a small amount, I mean 150,000 or something like that. That's not small, but when you're talking about $6 million or something budget, it's smaller, okay? We do have 560 some thousand dollars in contingency reserve. Now, if we really had to get through something, we could use a little bit for that, or in food service to get through that. But basically right now it's our backup. So let's say, heaven forbid, the special ed co-op got sued by a student issue, and they said everyone needs to pony up some more money because we can't pay. Well, that's where it would come from for us, because we don't have extra. It used to, in the old days, you'd build up, you'd have 2 years of money in your plan, so you had extra. Not anymore. You don't do that anymore. No one can do it, it's too expensive. Okay, so but that is our backup if we need that. We're going to cut expenses, possibly look down the road at increasing our LOB by 3%. We can discuss that in more detail later on. Okay? And look at some other possibilities as we go. See where we're at, any retirements coming up or anything and stuff. But that's where we are. And he told me today that there's a lot of people in the same position for the same reasons. Insurance, special ed costs. We gave raises when things were, there was a lot of money, but it tightened up, and now with these other expenses, and with student numbers going down, possibly put you in a pinch. Okay, questions? Anyone have any questions? We need every kid enrolled we can get, because they're worth a lot of money each.
Can we have this, if we do talk about it in the fall, can we have it run with the expected low number from 2019 just to make sure that that's the result?
We can look, because it'll be on next year, so it's kind of hard to guess, but we could basically run that number through this system and get an idea. That's how we would get an idea. So probably after the 20th,
to
when
know
we see
which,
what it's going to be,
your low number.
then we'll run it back through again and see how much down that's going to be.
Because again, I don't know the forms very well, but just looking at going through, your weighting factors are still all going to be there.
Yeah, they do adjust them some, especially on the how much help they're going to give you.
Right.
So you never know. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes when we're doing better, we still get a better. It looks like they take turns. Like they'll give you a capital outlay help one year higher, and then they'll give you LOB higher than that. It's like they alternate.
Right.
Doesn't make sense. But anyway, yes, we can run that like around October. We'll probably have some idea. Then we'll usually guess the other numbers about the same, like for the tech ed kids and all that. We keep those numbers pretty close to the same and get a general idea where we'd be. Any other questions? We do need you to approve to send us to the paper and be published, if you would.
Do I hear a motion? Sean has moved. Do we have a second?
A second.
Michael has seconded. Any further discussion? And this is just to send it to the telegram, and then we'll do the budget hearing at the next one.
Then we'll vote. Approve.
Any further discussion on the budget? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Jamie. 7-0. We need a motion to approve the budget hearing, August 10th at 7:20.
I so move.
Jamie moves that we have the budget hearing on August 10th at 7:20. Do we have a second? Abby seconds it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried, 7-0. Next item on the agenda, the discussion of the restart of school.
Okay, I'll start this up a little bit because it changed from when we set this meeting, like almost immediately, that the governor was probably going to look at moving the start date back of school. And this afternoon, she had a press conference and said that's what she was gonna, her proclamation was gonna be, and they would put that out in writing and send that to the State Board of Education. It has to have State Board of Education approval, and it was to September 9th, I believe, not before September 9th. 8th. Not before the 8th, which would be the 9th
Right.
if you start the first day.
Right.
The State Board has to approve that. I think I sent out to you, I was pretty confident they would, or she wouldn't have done it, but now I'm not as confident as I was, because there's a lot of politics in it. There's a, imagine that, but they are elected by party, so they're mostly Republicans. That doesn't in education mean as much, but they're catching a lot of heat from some power groups, and others on the other side are pushing. It's quite an important decision they have to make. So we'll know Wednesday where they stand on that. She also had a proclamation about masks, which was one of our main topics we've been talking about, and that would be masks for everyone in the building, basically. Okay, students, adults, everyone. If you could keep 6 foot apart, space. So, but oh, I thought you had a question.
No, I did. If you can keep 6 foot apart, you don't have to wear them. Is that what you just said?
I think that's. I think you have to have 6 foot at least of separation to be able to not have it. Now I don't know where you're going to be able to do that in a classroom, mostly. What I think of is, when I think of that, is like a teacher up speaking to the whole class. If he or she's back away and they're 6 foot apart, they could probably do the lesson. Then they go out in the room, they're probably going to put their mask on when they're up close. But we'll get her full order and know more about it. But the first thing we were talking about this past week was about if school started basically 2 weeks later for us, a couple weeks later, how would that work? And we worked through a couple scenarios. We don't want to get too far into the weeds on that until the board approves that, the state board approves it. But we looked at a couple of possibilities, because our teachers have a 180-day contract, and we would have to meet with them and talk to them about kind of moving the start, moving the end of that. And then the other thing we would need clarification on is, and something to think about a little bit, is if we extended the day a little bit, each school day, to get our hours, because it sounds like they're not going to change the hours. They couldn't change the hours till January anyway. The legislature has to do that, but our 11/16 hours is still in effect. So we have to get in our full year, one way or the other. But one thing we kind of played around with was the idea of extending each day a little bit, and then we wouldn't be still finishing when we were going to finish, but we would be finishing not in June either, or the very, very end of May. We could be finishing a little earlier, probably. Other possibilities, which will also take discussion with the teachers because of our contract, is spring break, changing some days in spring break. You have the Monday after Easter. I mean, you can pick up some days. You can pick up a little time if we don't have any snow or regular flu. So there's possibilities around to get your time in, as far as you're worried about getting your time in. Now, that doesn't offset, though, all the possibilities and traps of the fall if we have to be out because of cases and things like that. So just purely from saying like a normal year, except starting in September, you end up about around June the 4th, somewhere in there, if you took no other changes. We haven't worked that up. There's no use working it up until we see what's passed, but then we would have recommendations. We have to make sure they're going to let you. I don't see how they keep you from it extending your day to get your hours. If you get your hours, you get your hours. But we would, if there's other changes, we would need to talk to the teachers and work out an agreement on that. I think some people were asked about when we were talking about masks and things like that a little bit. Would that be from now on? And I hadn't thought about it that way. But really, the idea, the plan is, this is a one-year plan for this year. We don't know what next year would bring. So there might be, it'd be nice if there's no need for a plan this time next year, that we're back in regular form and everything's going just fine. But this is just for this year. So then if there's a plan next year, it might be different in different ways. So it's a good question though, but because they would require masks in the classroom this year doesn't mean like every year now everyone has to wear a mask in the classroom. Now maybe during flu season it might not be a bad idea, but we've never done that. So that wouldn't be the case.
I was asked about face shields.
If people can wear face shields. I'm not an expert, so I'd have to see. I don't think they're quite the same as masks, so I'd have to see where that would fit in.
Like instead of?
I don't think,
Generally,
how
they
that would-
supplement.
yeah. It's if you're, because I know one of the, or maybe it was in the plan sent out from the state, was like, if you're, have a student you think shows the symptoms, and like Angie was working with them, they recommended a face shield and a mask and gloves to work with that student. So that's like double, just to add to the protection, so it wouldn't cough in your face and get in your eyes or above the mask. I think if I'm interpreting that right, I believe so. I do want to try to pull up our surveys, let you look at those before we go very much further. I will start first with the family surveys. And I'll fully admit Mr. Hauser did this for me. Okay, we got 471 responses. That's pretty good. There's, I don't know if everyone caught on in the beginning, but it's one response per student you had in school. So that's pretty good. These are the buildings and how they responded. That makes total sense, because that's about how they're spread amongst our different buildings. Okay. Question: should we receive guidance from health authorities that it's safe to return to school with cautionary measures in place? Will your child be returning? And how much concern you have. And when you read these yourself, it's like, you might not read it. I mean, that's how questions are going to be, surveys are going to be sometimes, but 45% said they had no concerns. And just because they say yes and they have some concerns, sometimes we hope those are things that we can answer as we put our plans together for people that can answer those concerns, and then they fit. I can totally see not saying you have no concerns, but hopefully what concerns they have, we can alleviate some of those for them as we do our plan. We're always really interested in this because, no, I do not feel safe for my child to return to school, because if that's the case, we need to be sure we are in contact with that family and their child so that they work through our district if they're going to do at-home learning. Now, it's not something we're pushing. We want them in school. We want them to be able to be in school. But if that's really how they feel, we still want them to be USD 211 students, not online with someone out of Elkhart. Because we don't get paid for that either. Besides, they're our kids. So we really got to make sure we're in touch with these people and that we say, hey, we can still work with you. Okay? Here's some no's, but I could change my mind. Well, we want to change their mind. But if they really feel like it, then we got to provide them education at home. So no, quite a few I'm not sure's, and that makes, I get that. Because it's changed a lot since we sent this out already. Okay, let's see, pretty much same. Move this down. Oh, here we go. Oop. Wake up. Escape and get back away. I think I moved it up a couple of spots. Okay, comfortable. Here was the one about coming to school, but then when you ask about regular basis and the only offer was to come to school and not an offer of staying at home. Still see the split. Not a lot, not really a lot different there. Here's some questions and the percentage they got. I thought this was interesting. Which of the following makes you feel more comfortable with your child returning to school? Things that I felt pretty good about it because these are all things we can make happen. Improve cleaning, contact if anyone gets sick, the guidance from our local providers. We had some of that last week. Daily individual health checks, those may be required now anyway, but it was something we were looking at already. Hopefully that's already starting to happen on reduction in local cases. We're working on these are in the plan on social distancing. These were already in the mix on masks. I noticed that I want the teachers to wear masks. I'm not as excited about the kids, but transportation, safety measures, we're working on that. And wearing masks on transportation drops off down from there. You can read it. I have to read it to you. Okay? So I think those are kind of results we would expect.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Her mandate today, didn't it say that the social distancing requirements don't have to be met if you're wearing masks? Yes.
Yeah, if you're wearing masks, you don't have to meet them.
Okay.
Symptoms checks. Considering they don't know what symptom checks we're going to do, this turned out pretty good, really. Extremely comfortable. I mean, almost everything. Everyone was pretty, made sense. There might have been one or two uncomfortable. I'm not sure because we're not like, send the thermometer on them. I don't know why it keeps kicking off. It sure is annoying. Doesn't like me. Okay. Then people said they could get their own kid to school, at least till we actually asked them to do it. But that could prove important if we run out of bus drivers or something happens on that department. Some additional results. If this links or not, I'm not sure. Oh, there it went. Yep. Those are kind of small, but cleaning, it hit on the things that they said most important before. Makes sense. Someone talked about the hybrid classes with 2 in, 2 out of school. They were really good points I thought people made on this one. Be sure we clean hands, hand sanitizers, all the kind of things that we're looking at. Alternate schedules possible. I mean, they had good ideas. People put some good ideas out there. So that was encouraged that they've been paying attention to what's going on and use common sense. That's not bad. Temp checks. No sharing of supplies, things that really our principals are putting into their plans already. So I think we can really be on the same page with most people. Now, we'll look real quick at the staff one. $72 responses, that's not too bad. This is all staff. Okay. Not as many with no concerns, a few more with some concerns. Of course, we're concerned, we need to know what we need to do for these, what safety measures they're considering, what they're thinking about, and what we can do to alleviate those problems for staff, to have them be able to work. Total are very comfortable, almost half. I'd take just comfortable. And then not at all. Those are the ones, once again, not at all comfortable. We need to talk to them and find out what they're looking for, or what would make them more comfortable to come to work. And then their concerns. You notice everyone's top of the list, pretty close, is setting protocols on contacting if someone gets sick, and they mean with the virus. The cleaning, our guidance we've been getting, they're a little higher on the mask wearing staff is. Not only teachers, but also students. You can see, it was like about, it wasn't quite 30, that's like 20% more, 20% higher there. I think this is not as high because they know what how big our classrooms are, and they're like, that ain't gonna happen. We'd all be happy if this would probably be better on testing.
Mr. Wilson, if I can
Yes.
ask a question. The top one on the staff and the one on the parents seem to be that it's being contacted if a student, teacher, or staff member gets sick. How do we work that with HIPAA laws and stuff? We've had that discussion with our.
The only way we're going to be able to contact is very, very general, like someone in your student's classroom let's say tested positive. We can't tell them who it is.
Right. So we have to be careful of that, right?
Yeah, we can't tell them. That's why I think we try to leave that as much as possible to like Leslie and Angie.
Yeah.
And that way, the fewer people, the less chance of mistakes. Because I can just see if the way it goes now, it's out there before it hardly leaves the clinic, it seems like. But they're going to start bombarding the office, and the secretaries are going to be going, cannot comment. You know what I mean? That's got to be handled carefully and be very general. And only then when they do the tracing, the contact tracing, they can call and say, well, were you here? And sometimes that could pretty much identify who it is to the person they're contacting, but not the whole school district or community. I don't think they relax some on the HIPAA laws, but not to that extent that we'd be saying, oh, well, it was so-and-so in third grade.
So for
That's
sure, we're
all.
going to have to work with our county health office.
Yes.
Close.
Yes.
From day
And,
one.
and then
and all.
what makes me a little nervous about them being overwhelmed with that is it's one thing to do it like we had this past week where we had several cases in 2 weeks there, but if a couple of those cases are in a school setting where we have 600 kids involved, if it's different buildings and their parents and stuff, it's a whole different thing than maybe there were 5 or 6 people at one gathering and they have to be contacted, or 10 or whatever. Now it's like, well, the elementary school has 300 kids and they may have been in contact with all of them or someone. That's going to put a lot of pressure on them and the system. I kind of worry about that because we're just not staffed that way. We're not staffed that way. They're not staffed well enough to deal with a real concern about an outbreak, I think.
There's nothing you do that for now, lice or hand, foot, and mouth disease, till the letter doesn't go out per classroom.
Can you use your text caster system and break it
To
into
some
class,
degree. Well,
like class groups? And
ooh, we don't have it broke. We generally have it. At one time we had it broke down by building, but I'm not sure that's up to date. We generally have staff by buildings, and we have district-wide. We might have parents, but it's probably all parents. It's probably not just like a building. And currently we don't. That doesn't mean it's doable. I mean, it's something you can do,
Yeah, you have to
but
go
you'd have a whole long list of them if you try to do like every class
in. Yeah.
level, grade level. Questions about any of those things? Symptom checks as far as staff, they're pretty much okay with that. Here's one. Would you prefer teaching? Would you prefer on-site learning or remote learning? And just like everyone else, staff would like to have the kids in the room. Teaching on site. Additional safety. Those are really small, but they looked at like staggering so kids aren't all in the hallway at once. Stickers for social distancing on the floors. Different ways of maintaining social distancing in classrooms, really, several of those. Restructuring attendance policies with COVID. It's a good question. Wearing masks. Someone couldn't think of anything, that's good, I guess. Wipes, all the things we've been talking about. Sprays, cleaning rooms. Disinfecting. Here's one question I can't find. I'm figuring out a hybrid situation that would be totally comfortable with limited students each hour, as long as we wear a mask and a social distance. They would be comfortable if they had a limited number of students each hour, but they know hybrid is difficult because we talked about some of those last time. Who would be at school, who would not be at school, alternating schedules. So we haven't spent a lot of time talking about hybrid as administration. Any questions on those? If there was one more question on there, the teachers must have had an extra question. Social as well as educational purposes, absolutely. Safety issue, not a partisan issue. This is not a bad suggestion. Just to go over protocols of wearing masks and everything. There's questions about quarantining, and I know there's some people concerned staff-wise is like, how does quarantining work, and well, that kind of gets my sick leave. And we've talked about this just a little bit, but we haven't talked to most of the staff about this yet. So the law's not real helpful. They give you, like, if you're quarantined one time through, you don't lose sick leave, but they don't help you much if you'd have to go through a second quarantine. So hopefully there'll be some improvement on that a little bit, or some agreement. for her to be back to school, whatever precautions necessary to make it happen. Pretty good answer. Okay. Now, I had on here to talk about masks a little bit, but I think we kind of need to see where all that lands a little bit. And that it may not be a huge option for us, I guess. We'll see. But you can sure discuss it. Then I want also to have a chance for principals to kind of give you an update on where they're at, how their issues they might be seeing or questions they might have, looking towards the board, any guidance there. So.
I thought I read that on the State Board of Education, they were not gonna dictate a mask policy at each community.
They're not, but they're saying the governor can do it without the state board. The state board can decide whether she can start school late or not, but not the mask. The mask issue has already been straight from the governor. The state board didn't. I don't know how that all worked out. The state board doesn't decide that one. Just the late start. They approved that, yes or no. She said, and they haven't said they said they weren't voting on that one. They were only voting on the late start.
So where are we at with the mask? What did she say?
Right now, the governor says that everyone will wear a mask in school.
Even down to kindergarten.
That's what she said, yes.
Unless you can social distance. So in the classroom, we could possibly take.
In a classroom, if you wear a mask, yeah, you need to wear a mask in the classroom. And I don't have it till we see the details of it, but pretty much you're not going to be able to social distance. If you don't, you have to wear a mask. So,
But if you
we'll
can,
see.
you can take your mask off.
And we're working on things.
Well, there'll be,
Outside.
the thing I think some of the plan is, some of the things we need to think about are, one, everyone in their plan is working on a way to have a chance for students to take their mask off. So that they don't have to, we don't expect a kid of any age level to wear a mask from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. So, I mean, literally, when you have a break, teachers are going to have to put in their schedules a break to where somehow they can get their kids in a place where they can spread out and take their mask off. So they can get a breath of air so that they're not, it's not all moist from them just breathing in it. Or switch mask and have a different, change mask and have a dry mask to put on. But a chance to not wear the mask 2 or 3 hours in a row or something. We don't want that. And I think even in the governor's plan, it really follows the guidances that I saw, where the guidances put out in the state board's recommendations. Now, they weren't required, they were recommendations. She's making them required. But they were very similar to the those recommendations as far as masks. She was just, except for K through 6th grade wearing masks in school. Those were not in the recommendations, and she said they wear those. We were talking about in Norton on buses, having everyone wear masks on buses. Which is a
So
little
her
different.
executive order does not say,
Have you found it? Because it wasn't even written up yet when I saw it.
yeah, it's online now.
Okay.
But you're right, it does say, I missed it. The instances where you don't have to wear it is while eating, while working, other than preparing food or meals in a room or office that is, one, not open to students, or in which all individuals can maintain 6 foot of distance. With infrequent or incidental moments of closer proximity. While engaged in activity which it is unsafe or impossible to wear a mask, children who are not students and are 5 years of age or younger. People with a medical condition, mental health condition,
Yeah.
or disability.
So that kind of
Depth.
matches the guidelines too.
And it talks about hand sanitizer being in every classroom.
Yeah.
Once an hour.
Yeah, and they recommend every hour, or hand washing every hour or something.
No
too.
less than once every hour.
But one of the big ones on there is the temperature checks before they come into the building.
Yes.
now,
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
not the way we were thinking at first. So that's gonna take,
Yeah, and I think they're gonna have to still think that through, because one reason that wasn't being recommended was because if you take like Wichita Northwest and you try to run everyone through a temp check in the morning, it may be 10 o'clock in the morning where you get 1,000 kids through the bill. I don't care how many entrances and how many thermometers you have. So I'm not sure but I'm not sure we can't still do what we're thinking. I mean, as long as we check them before we get them really in the classroom and going.
She talked about that, because one of the reporters asked her.
Yeah, she asked me,
that
she said they
specific
would, and I'm
question,
like,
Like what
okay.
Topeka would do. And she said there are entrances at the Topeka high schools that are not being used. And they would station people at those entrances as well to get those temperature checks done.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting answer.
too.
Okay.
You literally can take the temperature in 2 seconds.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So you're just looking if they pass.
Mhm.
So
but I know one of the things before was concern was like, okay, it's 20 degrees outside, and you come in, oh, he's 84. I mean, you know,
So do you have to have documentation of it, like for each student?
I think you'll
I know
have
at
to check.
daycare-
I think you'll have to have a graph or something,
At
or something to
daycare,
check
we
off.
do have to have name, their temperature at check-in.
Well, why wouldn't we go the other way around? If they don't document it unless they're over.
No, I think you have to. You have to have it documented every student.
Right.
That's time consuming.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, it's almost got to have to be a check off kind of thing so you can move along.
That's when even in the workplace, that's when HIPAA gets involved, because you actually, as not a doctor, you can't know the person's temperature.
That's right.
So even in my
Yeah,
office,
they're
I get
supposed to tell you. Yeah.
I get my temperature taken, and there's a piece of paper over it, and he has to flip it around and flip it up, and I tell him it's okay, because he can't know my actual temperature because of HIPAA laws. Or the nurses.
Nobody can remember.
Tell me what it says.
Correct, and we just have to
I
say,
don't
okay,
know my
we actually
number.
can't tell them the number.
Yeah.
We just say, it's under 100.4, right? So you just
So
say,
have we missed the boat? We're trying to do it. Why don't we think about renting additional spaces and segregate us all day? So you've got 20 people, there's plenty of empty buildings in this town that could be rented, so
Not without a cost.
not much. I mean,
We don't want to bring her here. This
socially-
one's expensive.
Huh?
This
Then
one's
you have to think
I'm
about
just
moving
saying, I'm just
supplies, extra supplies.
Yeah, but we're all,
It's a ton of money.
So what about lunch?
but we could social distance.
What about lunch?
How do
Transportation
we
costs.
do it now?
Huh?
Lunch, then you got janitors moving back and forth,
Well,
and
You'd avoid a lot of stuff. You could social distance each desk and not have to have all this.
from recommendations by the county health department. So I think if you're gonna move forward that way, we can still go back to reflecting what Dr. Maurer recommends as the subject matter expert in the coronavirus.
What was the date we closed it the first time?
A week ago.
No, before that.
No, it was before that.
It was closed
I
before
mean,
that.
that's just it. I mean, we didn't vote on any of those others.
No, I
so
didn't.
Why don't we just go to what it was?
I closed it the first time.
Mhm.
So.
And then we met to vote on whether we could open it, because that's how you decided to do it.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
The motion is to,
Revert back to it was open, it was.
What's the date? Was it July?
Is that Wednesday, wasn't it?
It was a Wednesday.
the original.
Don't we have to say that it
Closed
wasn't
it after.
mandated by the governor?
So then Wednesday the 8th.
That it can't open?
we've got a motion to second. So the motion is to revert back to,
You're still working on the motion.
Well, okay, can I interject a second?
Yes, please.
Since that time that we had it open though, Keisha had come out with a new recommendation as far as masks are concerned. So, when Mr. Wilson and I got together, we worked on a statement when we were gonna reopen, we thought we were gonna reopen, to say, okay,
With
we're gonna
masks.
reopen, but with these Keisha recommendations regarding masks in place. So, I'm all for reopening necessarily, but I think the mask recommendation still needs to be in place. Now, it could all be, or not, come Wednesday or Thursday.
Which for outside was like coaches and bystanders, right?
Right. If you're actually running,
But if you're running, you didn't wear
mask
one.
on.
right,
If you're in the weight room and you're just a bystander, you're gonna have your mask on. If you're at open gym, you're gonna play volleyball. If you're on the court, you probably didn't have your mask on because you were playing and it was gonna get wet. If you were on the sideline, you're gonna have your mask on. Coaches should have their mask on. If you're in the weight room and, I mean, I can understand, maybe if I'm doing squats, maybe I don't need it on, but
If you had a spotter.
I would guess a lot of people could probably squat with a mask on.
I rescind my motion. I move that we do it per Keisha regulation.
I just assumed that, sorry.
I'll second.
Yeah, I got the second on that one.
so the motion is to now open it back July what?
28th.
What day is that?
Tuesday.
July 28th, following Keisha recommendations. So does that mean that we won't have a meeting next week?
Yes. Well, unless you want to call one for some special meeting.
And you're talking no meeting, no health official advice. You're just saying just open it.
Location.
Unless Board of Education says no, right?
Then you have to have a meeting. You'll need to have a special meeting.
This gives us hope.
That we'll have a meeting or not have a meeting? Oh, okay.
That's it, it's budget.
Any more discussion? The motion is to allow the weight room to open July 28th following Keisha recommendations.
Activities.
All activities, this is activities.
Summer activities.
Summer activities.
My last discussion, so we're going by Keisha, not local health officials, is that correct?
We're doing masks and social distancing and I don't know what word you did. I don't understand.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, that was a clarification issue.
I got the second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
3. Sean, Craig, and Mike.
Yeah.
I think we should have to vote like this, too.
I know, but Jamie can't.
He can be an aye man.
All those
Which
opposed,
side?
same sign, say aye.
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 I only heard three.
And if the governor's order stands, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Just making sure.
Do we have a special meeting then? After the
How many people can phone in?
27th?
You want to phone in?
Two, I think.
That's all we're talking about.
You can phone. You can phone in. I don't know. I've never had more than one. Just saying.
City council has 2.
that phone in?
And they have 6.
So, can I make a motion? Don't we need to?
For what?
If it's rescinded, like if she does not put out her executive order, that we have to follow it, right? We can
But-
still open the weight room.
You gotta remember that her executive
Like
order
we said-
states August 10th to September 8th.
Okay. But we said.
Because it
that we
doesn't
would
say
meet
anything right now.
To discuss it with local health officials.
Right.
Don't we need to do that?
Oh, so you're saying would it be open from the 8th to the 8th?
It could,
Yeah.
to the 10th,
Or the
or the
10th,
9th of
I mean.
August, 9th of August. Because that's what her mandate says.
Well, my issue is we said we were going to have a meeting after we talked to local health officials to try to open it on that date. If it doesn't follow through, I think you still have to do that. That's what we voted on. Is that not correct?
That's what the meeting on the 27th is.
Yeah. We voted, that's what we voted on, that we had to meet to
So
discuss.
sometimes we let local health officials attend to the meeting, and sometimes we let the governor.
So if, just not making a motion, but if you talked about opening it up according to Keisha rules, if the local health department agrees on the 28th, could we make a motion that way so we could leave it
Which
up
Dr.
to?
Meyer did at one time.
We could
Yeah,
leave
we
it up to
can do
Mr.
that.
So
Wilson,
you know.
talking to Dr. Maurer,
Right.
being in agreement, but also
did.
follow Keisha regulations, just to at least have that conversation, but it'll still allow it to open up.
Yeah,
which
cause you
wouldn't
know
require
somebody's
the
gonna
meeting.
call and say, well, we can still open it on the 28th. We agreed that we were gonna meet and talk about it. If the health department said it was fine, then that's fine, but
I think
that's how we
they're
voted.
just trying to say, can we make a motion to let Mr. Wilson or one of the principals talk to Dr. Maurer,
Yeah, that's
following
fine.
Keisha guidelines, and open it on the 28th, which would be the 2 weeks past our previous recommendation from last
Yeah,
week.
I feel like that's our duty, because that's what we voted to approve in our last meeting.
So I'll make a motion to open all summer activities as of July 28th, following Keisha guidelines under the approval by Dr. Maurer, which we talked
local
about,
health
or local health officials.
Because she might not be.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to open summer activities July 28th, following Keisha guidelines upon the approval of local health officials. Michael moved, Sean seconded it. Discussion.
Jamie heard that.
Jamie, did you hear that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I was waiting. I just wanted to make sure we're doing stuff according to local health officials. That's kind of the whole basis.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, before you let go today, you guys really need to decide this fall how many board meetings you want to have a month.
8.
Are you gonna let your are you gonna let your administrators do the work, or are you gonna meet every time something comes up? You need to think about it, because every week's not right. We get paid nice money to make decisions. You need to let us make them. We can call Maurer. We called Maurer once before. The board didn't like it. So, let us know if you're gonna use this or not gonna use this. Because you're gonna be up there every week, fiddle farting around, trying to make a decision on something they're hard. I mean, they're not, some things need discussion, and we need to have special meetings, and sometimes you gotta let administration just take care of it. Okay? Because you're gonna be up here a lot. This fall's gonna be different than anything we've ever done. So we gotta, some of it's gotta kind of distribute out, have us do it. Some of it, we do need your input, definitely. That's all I got.
Anything Anything else? Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
I like to see every week if the tax didn't get.
I think we're not even paying attention to the reality of it. Like these kids don't even get it.
When there's a great Times article that came out this afternoon talking about the countries that have been successful, that have been reopened since the middle of April. And I read everything that all these guidelines, and nobody's talking about, it listed 4 countries. Denmark, they started back in April. And again, they're back to the smaller groups of kids going in. It's a group of 12. They kind of work them through. They're the ones that go to lunch together. They're the ones who go
Oh,
out.
you stay in your group.
That's small groups, so if you get a breakout in that group, then that group gets removed. But the countries have been successful. And again, they've been doing this since April. We're trying to go back in August, September. I go through the guidelines that are coming out from everybody. It's like, well, nobody's referencing what's already been done for the last 5 months in other countries that has been successful. And we're creating a whole new set of guidelines that we think is correct. Instead of using something that's already been proven and still continuing on, but I'm sure guidelines and rules have a lot of different controls, but it was interesting to read where they have been successful and not getting that breakout in that school setting.
So I have a question, like if you're looking to this as a teacher to set up your class, do you pretty much set it up as you're teaching it online? And then if there's kids who don't participate because you want them still to remain in the district, the instruction, everything is there, and then you teach off of that in person? I mean, because if you go, if you allow some sort of hybrid format, that's doubling the work for.
It's a concern. Because if your online lesson is way different than your classroom lesson,
Yeah.
you're doubling your work, yes. They have to be similar in some ways. And, I mean, I can let them speak to that more than me, that are, what they're looking at with their staff.
Can the lecture be live?
Well, I think that question really depends on the grade level. I mean, having been previously a kindergarten teacher, no way. No way.
No.
No way. As a high school teacher, I can see it being more feasible. And I have had a couple high school teachers contact me and say they're just going to go off of an online format, and if they have people that aren't in class, fine, they're going to use basically, but then those people are not my science, my chemistry teachers, my biology teachers that are going to be in labs. How do you dissect a pig from home? And so there's going to have to be some variability. But speaking as a kindergarten teacher, that would be different every day, every day. I don't know how they could do both in a kindergarten classroom every day, but I'll let. That's a kindergarten teacher in me just stands up and says, oh, please no.
Yeah, you'd have to be as possible.
I think if the numbers are low, if you're talking about very few kids, 1 or 2 that are not coming to school, I think it's very possible to open up a Zoom meeting, those kids check in, they're there. They may not get everything that you can do at that point in time, but at least they will get the direct instruction from the teacher. If there was, you have to look at the numbers. We typically take, if you have your bigger 7th grade bunch, you're going to have 4 classes of 7th grade English, and you're going to have 3 of the 8th grade, and your teacher has their plan period. So, like
Yeah.
you're saying, if you were going to have one that was strictly an online English 7th grade and an online English 8th grade, could you take those numbers then and still divide up to where you can still do as much social distancing as you can to try to allow those teachers to have the time to reach those kids?
Yeah.
Is there any school liability?
Is there a school liability? I think your most liability is going to be if you don't wash hands regular, if you don't do temp checks maybe on math. You have a certain amount of liability if you just are negligent. Usually you got to show that you're negligent. If you're trying, I think you're going to see less liability.
I know they're looking at legislation in the federal system to remove that liability from places like school in the next act, whatever comes through.
I mean, if a parent gives their kid a Tylenol so their temp stays down, they slip in and then they give it to the whole class. That's why he checks it. Well, when they came in, that was their temp. So something happened there. Wasn't on us. And you find out, well, yeah, he didn't feel good, so I gave him the Tylenol. And he came to school, and then when they checked him again, he popped up to 104 or something. That happens with the flu. Sometimes. Parents send them to school.
So what are you asking us then? Because we're just basically gonna have the state tell us what to do.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you before the state was telling us what to do.
I'm not sure
No.
they actually have the authority to tell you how to do it. So what about home rule? I mean, if you wanna have, because the set of rules in Kansas City is not gonna be the same as what we can do. It doesn't make any sense.
I think we're waiting to see will they fight that out.
Well, it's already July 21st.
Craig, which part of, when you're talking about Kansas City versus?
Well, I'm just
North,
saying,
What
well, you're-
part of those rules are you talking about?
Well, you're trying to, number one, number of traffic, number of exposure people coming to Kansas City versus Norton, and there's just less cases. Potentially, so you could have somebody come through the Loves that affected the whole town.
But what rules are you not wanting to have to follow? Is that what you're
I'm
asking?
just, no, I'm
Well, I'm saying,
basically.
the guide, the state's got the guidelines, and the guidelines are still in place, and you kinda can pick and choose a little bit on the guidelines, what's gonna work for you, but as far as what the governor came out with today, as far as I can tell, we don't have a choice.
Yeah. But that's what he's kind of asking.
Yeah, I mean,
Is it local control or is it state control?
you gotta go to school.
I think she's saying as far as those two things, it's state control and that's it.
She is on the mask, for sure. The other, she said the state board.
Well, state board, yeah.
Which the state board does set regs for us.
Yeah, but she made it clear, like, county commission can't overrule
Yeah.
that.
And then KSB would tell you that that might or might not be true.
Yeah.
Because KSB is going to represent local boards. So they're going to pause on that and say, because none of these things are happening so fast. Nothing, everything has to go to court. Well, these haven't been to court. So I'm sure there'll be someone take some of this to court, but I don't know how fast that'll move. Whether it'll be a school district or a parent or a parent who doesn't want the kid to wear a mask and the school says they have to, or I don't know.
Then you could
But
add
that's
that
kinda
in
what-
the liability that we went
That's
against
kind
the
of what,
recommendation.
Jennifer, didn't you watch that one KSB and they were like,
I did.
we don't know? A
Well,
whole bunch of we don't know for
And
sure.
they said if you go against the governor, because possibly county commissioner and the school board, your own school board can go against her in the setting in which she wants to push school back. However, if you go against what the governor is stating, the liability can come back on either your county or your school.
Liability. I mean, there'll be liability for forever.
If a cluster would come into your school, that
Sure, you're
liability
never-
could come
So
back.
you move it back 2 weeks, what difference does that make when you get infected? I mean, those are not,
The 2-week
that's
idea,
just kicking the can down the
I
road.
think the 2-week deal was to let everyone give them more time to get
But we've had,
situated.
since March, we knew this was coming. So-
Right, she's just,
Well, I think we thought in March though that we'd be ready to start right off, and a lot of places aren't. We may be by the time 2 more weeks come around. We weren't a week or 2 ago.
So, okay, so what are we doing? And we have 2 weeks, so what are we doing on our own to have a, so we're, because they're not any smarter than you or you or you. You follow me? I mean, you're all educators, you all know what people think and how.
Well, I think our people are working on a plan, but it's gonna have to be flexible to start school. If they said start August 21st, then we'd start August 21st. But if they tell us to wait and start September 9th, then we'll be ready to start September 9th. Like I said, about a month ago, I'd have said, we're ready to start, so we're gonna go in the fall, and we're gonna be able to do everything in the 1st of June. We weren't having any cases. We had, what, 2 cases? Then we have this little outbreak. Now it looks like we've had, what, 2 or 3 days in a row without, looks like possibly any new cases. So by the time we get to August, we may be back down flat. But then September, I don't know. Is it gonna do this all winter? It might.
So do we have an idea what the August 21st plan looks like?
For what now?
So if it doesn't pass, we can start school August 21st. What does that plan look like right now?
We're still building on that plan, because one, if the governor's plan is, if someone says they can't wear masks, let's say, and it overturns the governor, I don't know where that'd be, then we have to decide locally if we're gonna have masks. That was one question we had for today. If the state board says, no, we're not waiting 2 weeks, then we will start August 21st. If the governor says we all have to wear masks, then we would be ready to start with masks and as much social distancing. We'll have set up our temp checks. We'll set up washing our hands hourly, or have every room with their hand cleaner, all that stuff. That's what we'll do. We'll have ways to clean the rooms, but we don't have it like this yet.
No, but our
We're
position
working on
is
it.
we'll start August 21st in school with great health measures.
Unless,
Unless you choose, you can't. send
or
your kid.
or if Dr. Meyer and Leslie say,
No.
it's not good, don't start, or
Okay,
something.
yeah, that's what I meant.
Because it's a lot of people, parents and staff said, if the check with the local health officials. So that's what we would do. And we can make it work either way. We can think of ways to keep the year not longer and shorten it up a little bit and still get everything done. One idea on extending the day is, because of spreading people out to passing periods and extending lunch possibly, because you don't want kids sitting together at lunch, is to give us more time to do those things.
Sounds
Be
like
able
we
to
need
spread
to
lunch out longer.
Extend the day and keep the days till June. I mean,
You could, but you can, but you don't have to.
we're extending 15 minutes for education time, but there's not.
It's not gonna be education time though. It'll be getting through the process time. Yeah, there won't be 15 more minutes of education.
Probably less.
Yes, probably. But if people were hung up on the going till June, you could see why shortening it a little bit would be something that they think.
Wouldn't we all agree that it's the cases are gonna come up, they're gonna come down, they're gonna come up? I mean, that's kind of.
That's what we're seeing so far.
It's probably gonna go, so should we figure out a way to get on with it? Kind of. We're living amongst it, so we might as well not shut down and just carry on.
Well, I don't think we will shut down unless we have, I don't think we will shut down unless we have cases that we're told that we need shut down by health. The thing is, it didn't take much, because we talked about these last time. We don't really have any subs. If the teacher is in quarantine and her whole class is in quarantine, we don't need a sub, but how are we gonna educate them while they're in quarantine? Is the teacher in quarantine gonna teach them from home, or what are we gonna do there? That's the things they're working on, staff's working on. It's gonna be there, it's just gonna be kind of bizarre. Maybe you have one third grade section out, 2 third grade sections in.
And the teacher refuses to come on.
I think if they have I don't want to speak out of turn, if there's a health issue, that's something that has to be looked at. If they're just refusing to come, they're under contract.
What'd you say?
They're under contract if they're just refusing to come. If there's health reasons and stuff, or maybe even someone in the home, that's something that's gotta be looked at.
Okay.
But I'm kind of of the feeling if you get paid, you need to do something.
Agreed.
You don't agree with me, Mr. Mayor?
I agree on it wholeheartedly.
That's what I said. No, I mean, that's what I said. And I think most of our people want to. It said right on there, they want to get back in school, our staff does. They want to be back at work.
Right, there was what, like 15% or something?
Yeah, which could be 2 people. I mean, outside, whatever outside. But some people do have health risk, and some people have family members with health risk. So that's got to be flexible enough to see what will work. What can we do with those people? Maybe they need to call kids that aren't, they're supposed to be on the at-home school and doing it. We haven't heard from them, and they're calling up saying, hey, where you at? You need to get, staying after them way more than we did in the spring. Literally call every one of them every day, make contact and say, you need to get this in. You're not getting anything in. If they can't do, if they can't be in the classroom, they need a job that they can do. Then if they refuse to do that, then there's a situation. Principals, do you have anything you want to share or anything, how it's going? Since the rules change every day?
Well, and I think that's a good point.
Maybe quit changing.
We don't know what the rules are. They are changing, so we're getting ready to try to play this game, but we don't know what the rules are. And we can adjust the rules, but yet we gotta stay within certain things. But to answer your question, Abby, if school starts on August 21st, we're gonna have our buildings ready. If it waits until September, whatever, we're gonna have our buildings ready. I have complete faith in the staff of our district. We're gonna ask them to make adjustments, to be flexible, and some of them are scared to death of what's awaiting us. Hell, I'm scared. We've taken for granted years and years the transition from summer to school as teachers. And we can't take that for granted anymore. We've had to make changes. And today is something different from last week when this board met. And that may change next week. But we will be ready. And I have complete faith in the staff. I know we've all communicated at various times with our staff. We'll be ready the best we can. And we have to alleviate fears from people that are clear over here on the mask and clear over here on the mask. That's going to be a big challenge for us. We're not going to appease everybody, but we're going to do the best we can. And we're going to be fine. I think this staff in Norton will do the best they can for the kids, and we will work hard at it, and we'll do the best, knowing that their fear of what's out there is something that we're going to have to overcome. This whole thing is putting us all on edge, but we're going to do it. You tell us August 21st, we're going to be ready. If you tell us September, whatever, we're going to be ready and stuff. So
My reason for asking that was only, I think parents in the district want hey, our plan as of right now is to have kids in the building. Just, you know what I mean? Because there are some people that are like, still thinking that it's, going to be a complete hybrid thing. You can choose whatever you want, that sort of thing, or we're going to do completely online. And my thing is we want to put out there that our plan is to get kids back into school, and that we're ready for that. Now, when that happens, we have no idea.
I think it'll help some, for looking back on the staff side, is when we get our plans down on paper and they can see and they can just put it all together, because you chase around an idea, but if they can see and they turn the page and they go, okay, here's hand washing, here's social distancing, here's temp checks, here's the things we're doing every day, and just to be able to see it, have it in hand, but yet have the flexibility that the first time we have a case, it's going to be messy. Whatever grade level it is, if we have a case, it's going to be messy until we get it. Hopefully we don't have to practice several times and get good at it. That's what we hope. So.
guess the point I was making is I thought we would probably have like, okay, like the grouping of kids all through and separate them, and I was really thinking, you know, you could probably even take the grade school, the high school, and kick the high schoolers out to other you know, to really spread us out. And they can drive, and I mean,
Yeah.
if you could just keep your distance, that's half the battle. And
I think elementary, you can keep them in a group probably easier within a group. I think we really have to refigure high school
I know with all the
to
electives.
do that, because
we
they
might
end
just-
up with, in classes with different kids. Pretty soon the whole high school would be, if one kid had it, half the high school's exposed to that one kid probably. But elementary wouldn't necessarily,
Right.
could stay in groups. So
what's
I
your
see what you're
solution
saying.
For the high schoolers, I mean, they're.
I don't have,
there
I don't
is-
know that I have one.
I mean, let's be honest, the risk is there. That's your risk, and your janitors and you. Your risk isn't your kids.
Not
It's
as
grandma's
much.
at home.
And it's, I think the concern is kids taking it home is the risk. But that's also why the idea of everyone wearing masks and that kind of thing comes about, is to try to keep from those opportunities being quite as much. Doesn't mean there won't be, but that's the idea of that too. But I understand what you're saying about spacing. It's just, and it's something we can look at. It's just the logistics of buildings across town. But I know, and we've talked about it before, so it's worthy of looking at.
Jamie, you have anything?
It's my phone bill.
I don't know.
I hope
No,
so.
I don't. I was just listening intently.
Well, we
I
don't,
think it's hard to plan when we don't have all, we don't have an idea of what it looks like yet.
Right.
Another week we don't.
She'll keep us. She'll keep it.
The,
She'll keep it.
of course, the other thing was gonna be activities, and if her plans end, the activities are held up,
November 4th is probably.
as far as school sponsored was.
right.
And nothing to go into
That's when
there.
school opens back up.
Yeah.
November
What
4th.
more could you do with than mask and, I mean, than what we talked about?
And hand washing and mask and,
Yeah, what more can you do?
and try and keep 6 foot.
Right.
Those are the things you can do. That's all you can do.
That's what we've done since March, remember?
But while you guys are working on your plans, I'm assuming you guys are gonna have, okay, if this happens, this is what we'll do. You know, if, God forbid, we have anything, you guys are gonna have a plan that says, okay. And I know it's not gonna be a exact plan, because every case is gonna be different. You'd have to have 520 different ones. But kind of an idea of, if this happens, what we do.
What I'm doing, of course, that when we come back, our focus is not gonna be on the safety as much as it is the curriculum. We have got to get our curriculum boiled down to what are referred to as mastery objectives. What is it that has to be mastered before they go on to Chem 2? That has to be mastered before they go on to Algebra 2. And that is gonna be the focus for us from the beginning. And in lieu of faculty meetings, is we are going to be looking at, how do we do this? How do we map our curriculum? How do we align our curriculum so that it doesn't matter if we're in school or if we're out of school? Because to me, school's about learning. It's about learning, and yes, I'm gonna do everything I can to keep them socially distanced and healthy. But I don't think we can let that overshadow the learning that's supposed to take place in a classroom. And so our focus for day one is going to be on boiling down our curriculum, making sure it doesn't matter if we're in that classroom or we're online, we're ready to roll. We're ready to roll, and these kids are going to learn. They're going to learn. I do not want to come back and hear that if we had to go online, our kids didn't learn. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear that our kids were learning no matter what we're doing and that our teachers are ready. We were put in positions last year where we had to make radically different plans in a very limited amount of time. We've had the time now. We're going to take even more time and make sure that our curriculum is aligned and our kids are going to learn no matter where they're at. That will be my biggest focus as we move into next year.
The one area that's still up in the air a little bit, and it's been asked about, was that I'd asked Leslie about. I sent her 5 or 6 questions, and 2 or 3 of them were all like,
counties are all talking about this, and one was, if you have a kid in the class, who do you contact, like Andy and all that. So we're still definitely working through some of those things, because even the county level, they're not set for sure on how, with schools, and how dealing with a family is one thing, dealing with schools and classrooms and parents, they haven't worked through that yet either. So ours is gonna be administration and the health, and our nurse is gonna be our contacts on that, but still. So we'll keep working on our plans and try to start firming some things up once they settle in on something that we're gonna do. That'll be helpful. What's guidance and what's a rule? That's what we need to know.
All right, any other discussion on start school? The next on the agenda is the restarting of summer activities.
Which, same thing.
What do
Well, we did all this, put the agenda together before all this rulings came down. See, it was gonna be discussed at this meeting whether or not where things stood to reopen summer activities or not. Well, now you might have it for 2 days and turn around and shut it down again, so. If the
State board supports the governor's plan, activities was included in the closing until September. So, but when we originally set this agenda, we were gonna talk about that. But now, I mean, you can talk about it, but
can we vote to open it?
for 2 days,
Well,
or till, I mean, I don't know what your vote would be. But-
I'd make a motion to open it up until you hear something from the governor or the state board.
Can we do that when we voted to close it for 2 weeks last meeting?
It's on discussion.
you voted, you could probably, I mean, it'd be a new motion to change what you're doing, guys. There's gonna be an update, was the discussion, I think, last time, but.
There's a motion on the floor.
Same.
There's a motion and a second to restart summer activity programs. More discussion.
So what was your motion last time?
Do not start until July 29th, till after the July 29th
Yeah.
meeting.
July 29th.
Is that how it was, Julie? 27? 27, yeah, that's
It's
what
closed till the 27th. And you guys are gonna look at it again at your next.
we were gonna have a special meeting on the 27th.
Under Dr. Mauer's recommendation to close it for 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks.
She said with masks and social distancing.
She said to close it for 2 weeks, right?
That was her recommendation, was to close it for 2 weeks. Because we asked her specifically.
May I chime in?
Yep.
Okay, when I sat next to Dr. Mauer and Leslie last week, our discussion was that, do we want to be safe or do we absolutely want to throw caution to the wind and possibly see a large rise in cases? Therefore, they recommended that we close it for 14 days, hence the motion last week. And while I know the cases have gone down this week, to reopen now, it seems kind of silly. Why wouldn't we just wait the one more week? If somebody's put on quarantine, it's for 2 weeks. It's not for a week and then, oh, stuff looks better, you can go ahead and leave. The quarantine is for 14 weeks, or 14 days, my bad. So we voted for the 14 days in light of that with our health officials' recommendation. So I'm confused as to why we would change our minds on that.
Well, that's not saying somebody could, I mean, weights, I don't know, I mean, just closing the weight room isn't, these kids are going all over the place anyway. I don't understand what closing the weight room's doing to harm them, or, I guess I don't understand that. Kids aren't being isolated anyway. If they wanna go to weights, they should go to weights. If they don't, they don't.
It becomes our liability though. Doesn't it?
Well, it'd be our weight room.
Yeah.
It's a
But
choice.
is it a choice? No. Like, it's
I think-
supposed
Like I said, I don't know what will happen by Wednesday, but other possibility that would stay safer that's not in a weight room is to be outside. We could spread out and you at least run or do push-ups or whatever. I mean, whatever they want to run them through, drills, as long as they stay social distancing, at least to be outside, which would be safer than being in a weight. I mean, a weight room is going to be, because then it's too sweaty to wear masks, so now you're in there all close together. I get that being a concern, but it'd be nice if they were able to start running and doing drills and conditioning. Now, I don't know if it does, how much good it does if we get shut down Wednesday. It's 2 days, but if it's not, I guess then that's up to the board. I'm throwing that out as kind of a between the two arguments.
Mine is, if I go to the doctor and they prescribe me pills and say, we advise you to take these, it's common sense to take the pills. I'm just going off of what the doctor said.
I think we were assuming that at that night, I think cases were supposed to be going up. Did that happen? I never kept track.
We had a lot of
One or
tests.
two.
We had a lot of tests out at that time. I
But
mean,
we've
we
had,
didn't, but
we've
they had
had
a lot
one or
of
two
tests.
since then.
Yeah.
It
We had-
hasn't jumped like other counties. Just one?
But her 2-week recommendation was because of the incubation period
Which is 5 to 14 days.
of the high test.
Yeah, I mean, that's the stuff that
That's
we
why
sent
she
out.
said
The
14.
incubation period's 5 to 14 days.
That's
If
why I
we have a
said
spike
14
at a certain
days.
day, it's like wait 14 days from that spike and just see if that spike continues. And I agree, I wanted to see outside conditioning, but when you come from a doctor who has to worry about people's health walking in the door going, wait 14 days, school's probably gonna be delayed till September, I'd say at least let's give it another week. And when we haven't seen a spike and surpass that incubation period, I completely agree.
Well, here's a question for you. Since we voted till July 27th, what, does it retro back that it's open?
On the 27th?
What happens? What happens?
That's when we said we were gonna talk about it this week and see if we need a special meeting next week to vote on it.
Just on that one issue?
On that one issue, yeah. Which is why you put it on the agenda, correct? We're gonna discuss it
Yeah,
and see
because
if we need another.
it was asked to discuss it at this meeting, get an update at this meeting, but the 27th was what was discussed to be 2 weeks. That's the 2 weeks. Those are the 2 weeks.
So, again, I don't know what it goes back to. Open?
I'm not touching that.
I mean, you voted for that.
I was gonna
the
open it
motion
once
was for
and I
just
got shut
a
down.
timeframe, so
I'm
what
not
was the
gonna touch it.
rationale of those 2 days?
That we were gonna have another meeting to decide.
Just that issue?
Yes.
So we need another meeting next week. Can we make?
Well, rules might change in another week. you know?
Right.
Oh my gosh.
No, I mean, I don't know. That's up to you guys.
You look confused.
I made the motion.
You calling for the question?
No, I said I made the motion.
We're still discussing. All right, any further discussion? The motion is to reopen the weight room, to reopen summer activities. It's been moved and it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. No.
No.
2 to 5. 2 yes, 5
You
no.
hear the voices?
I hear lots of voices, Craig. Just telling you. I'm a good.
Yeah, yeah.
All
So
right,
the previous motion is still in place till the 27th.
correct.
So we having a meeting on the 27th?
No. So what was the rule prior to the 27th? Did she go back to that? I mean, that makes sense to me. You voted to end it on a certain day, so it ought to go retro back to what the rule was.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we went by county health department guidelines, recommendations, assuming school is going to start on the date it's going to start. They're going to give your best chance to have school starting on that date, not have an outbreak, was to close it for that time period. And then all was brought up as we had another discussion at the end of that time period to see if the outbreak continued or if it declined.
So it opens the 27th.
I believe the meeting, I have to go to the words, I believe it said it would be discussed on that date to see.
So it wouldn't open during the day on the 27th.
You would go
It was
back.
after the meeting.
You were going back to the county health department to say, where is it at now? Are we safe to go back to activities as we were before? I don't mind having another meeting next week, but I'd rather at least have that representation here because we agreed to it a week ago.
Jamie, your feelings?
You'll have to repeat that so I can hear it better.
Your feelings on meeting next week?
I'm all for it.
I move that we go, that the rule be reset to what it was prior to your first motion, the first motion,
As long,
which was open
Now
gym.
make us, I'm out of that one.
I mean, that's what the rule was, right?
as long as it